The following story is presented for your enjoyment. This classic work is now in the public domain, making it freely available to be shared and appreciated by all. Some elements may appear outdated or insensitive by today's standards, but we present this work in its original form to preserve its historical context and literary significance. Sit back, relax, and indulge in this entertaining tale. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Every bit helps this channel grow.
Shanghai Ship by John Marvin Adventures into Darkness, number 12, December 1953. A Bucko mate learns an important fact about kidnapping sailors. The fog came drifting in over the harbor, a thin, shifting mask hiding the few lamps that remained lit along the waterfront. Then it thickened and the rain began to fall, soft, pattering, turning the great wharves into glistening castles of mist. Against Dock 43, the Malayan Queen swung drunkenly at anchor, lurching in the heavy, oily swells as the tide came in. On the forward bridge, a bell clanged tinnily, then was drowned out in the chorus of foghorns. Two men appeared out of the mist on the rickety gangplank. The first was uniformed in sea blues. He wore a cap with a soiled second mate's insignia. The other cringed. He wore deck pants and a dark turtleneck sweater. "We'll be sailing in an hour," the first grumbled, glancing at his watch. "Stevens, we've got to snatch an extra hand." Stevens paused as he reached the bricks, staring back at the rusty, battered hulk of the Malayan Queen, and shuddered. "You'll never sign an extra hand for this tub," he said in low, quavering tones. "Not the Malayan Queen, Mr. Rackham." Rackham chuckled throatily. "There's not much choice, is there, eh, Stevens?" he said. "Not with a contraband cargo." He shook his head. "Orders is orders. We can't carry a load of high explosive without proper handling. Too dangerous." He jerked a thumb back. "Captain Galper says we need an extra man. We'll get one." The seaman looked round him through the murky gloom and shivered. "I wouldn't have come along if the old man hadn't promised me a bonus," he said shakily. "Well, he did," Rackham said sharply. "And when you promise the old man something, you've got to deliver. You know what happens when." "I know." Stevens interrupted whiningly. "I've had a taste of the cat before. It's only that Shanghaiing sticks in my craw." 45 minutes left, Rackham said brutally. "Come on, we'll find somebody along that line of grog shops." He hefted a blackjack from his back pocket and smacked it satisfyingly in the palm of his hand. They drifted slowly out into the fog, feeling their way. It wasn't a big port. The waterfront straggled way back to where the slums began, and in between was just a maze of alleyways, wharves low, tumbled hutches, and the occasional red glow of the door of a bar. "Keep your chin up, you sniveling hound," the second mate growled. "You've done work like this before." "But not on a night like this, sir," the seaman protested. He glanced about uneasily. "It's dirty weather. All the better," Rackham replied staunchly. "All we need is a sot with his wits addled and a wind to unsteady his toes." He paused suddenly. "Hear that?" Stevens tensed. "Hear what?" "Footsteps, you fool." Rackham froze. "Wait, someone's coming. If he's a likely-looking lad, you know what to do." Stevens nodded. Rackham melted away into the fog. The seaman waited. Then he heard the footsteps coming toward him, heavy, unsteady. He thrust a hand into a pocket, drew out a cigarette. The wind was blowing up off the harbor, blowing up into a sort of small gale now. Out of the fog, the staggering, ungainly figure came up to him. At a glance, the seaman knew it was an ideal prospect. Well-built, thick in the body, with long arms and a dull, brutish face. The mark of the tramp seaman was written all over his clothes. "Got a match, bud?" Stevens croaked, thrusting himself forward. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Rackham reappear out of the mist, his blackjack raised menacingly. The drunken seaman fumbled in his pocket for a match, muttering. Then Rackham struck. One short, sharp smack, and the other dropped. The second mate stowed his weapon away and bent. Puffing, he and the trembling Stevens dragged the inert body toward the Malayan Queen. It wasn't far, but the stones were slippery. Through the fog, at last, Rackham saw the lights of the contraband ship. Then his blood froze as Stevens yelled, "The patrol, sir!" He dropped the legs of the unconscious man and pointed. Rackham cursed, seeing the bobbing flashlights of the patrol coming up the wharf approach. He knew what would happen, now. Galper hadn't expected a surprise inspection visit. For once in his life, Galper hadn't counted on chance. The Malayan Queen would never sail now. The patrol would board her, find the contraband cargo, jail every officer. His lips curled. Chance. No, it wasn't chance. Someone with sudden feelings of patriotism had blabbed. You couldn't trust anybody these days. No one. He watched, with helpless irony, Stevens bolt for the gangplank in temporary safety. But there wasn't any real lasting safety. Except halt. Rackham heard the shout behind him. He turned to dash into the fog. Then his foot slipped, going through a rotten board on the gangplank, falling like a lead weight until he hit the water. And when he came up, he saw the Malayan Queen swaying toward him, toward the wharfside. Rackham screamed twice before it touched him with the relentless embrace of its 5,000 tons. When he woke, the fog was still there, Strand. Twisting painfully, he saw the port behind him and to one side, glinting feebly through the mists. And he heard the footsteps, saw the gang of men approach, cloaked over the sands. "He'll do," he heard a low, muffled voice. The man in command hovered over him, holding a lantern, grinning. "A likely lad for a Shanghai trip." "Shanghai trip," Rackham gasped. He tried to rise, fell back. "You're stealing me off to sea." "Where else should a dead seaman go, mate?" the man said, his broad face still grinning. "Even dead ships need likely hands. What better hand for a ship than a dead seaman?" "What ship?" Rackham screamed. "What dead ship?" The gang of men parted. Behind them, Rackham saw a tall ship riding at anchor, her poop riding high, her four masts carrying full sail through which the wind blew without bellying them at all. Her outlines wavered, ghostly, unreal. "A dead man's shipmate," the man said. "The Flying Dutchman.